let's delve more into infrastructural development now with the founder and chief executive officer of Offshore Lab, Emeka Obiwulu. He's right here in the studio. Mr. Obiwulu, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Eve. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so are you excited about this Lagos-Calabar? It's raised a lot of dust. But we know there's price to be paid for every kind of development. And so there we see the minister meeting with the communities that will be affected. So you have issues of compensation top on the list. Because we do not, individuals should be compensated. They could also take it to court. And these have caused delays in the past. For you now, how do you think this project, I mean, because connecting Victoria Island all the way to Calabar, I can just imagine the level of economic activity this could bring. So we have to weigh the costs and the gains. What's your take on how the government is handling this and the prospects in the project?
Thank you again, Ini. I'll answer this in two buckets. One bucket, you ask, am I excited about the project? Of course I am. When you look at our infrastructure gaps and look at what roads provide as pathways to our economic development, and look at all of the talk about needing $100 billion over the next 10 years sustained to meet our infrastructure gap, and you see a critical infrastructure project like that in an economic corridor, it's cause to be excited, definitely. The second part of that is you're talking about today's consultation and engagement. We look at projects as not building structures and infrastructure. It's like sowing seeds. And the success of that seed you're sowing is community ownership. So when you have initiatives like this, where you are trying to get that community buy-in, both from the people affected, but very importantly, the people who will take ownership of that project to ensure its sustainability over time, that is the right move in the right direction. Whether that could have been done earlier or later is a subject for a different conversation. What is most important that it is happening? Because when you walk away after the commissioning and cutting of the ribbon, there are people who have to have that local prioritization to take ownership and ensuring that the benefits of that road is actualized. If you have a 40 years life cycle, over those 40 years, there are people that should hold whoever to account who should actually have that oversight and ensure that we keep delivering, getting that value from it. So as a project, 100%, I am very excited about it, and I see a lot of potential, And at
least this meeting with the community members is a welcome move.
It is critical for every project. Right? Any project that you're delivering, when we're talking about sowing seeds, that's local prioritization and getting the people who are getting those benefits to take ownership of that project is key and fundamental to sustainability. So if that is happening now, and if that is sustained, not just in terms of engaging and compensation, but actually selling the value of this project, selling the value of it to their children, and then empowering them with that knowledge to take ownership of that sustainability over time. It's critical in every project. So this is a very important and very welcome development from the government.
Yeah, but I wonder if when you say the people should take ownership for the sustenance of it, then you have the tolls also. You know, that always leaves a bitter pill in the mouth of the people.
Right, so if you want to talk about tolling, I know the sentiments around tolling, but my personal opinion, tolling it's a global initiative, it's a global thing. It's not unique to us. If done right, it's a viable way to maintain roads and maintain your existing roads, expand it, and even build new roads in that sense. But the issue with our backlog of trust issues, of course, you have to have a number of things in place to be able to, one, convince you going through that toll that your money is even leaving where you're handling. So it has to be technology driven. So with that, you're cutting off a level of inefficiency in it. Whoever you're tolling has to see the immediate benefit of the tolling for them to actually buy into it. You don't want to go through gallops and bad roads and pay toll 5 minutes after. You want to see that efficiency in the repairs. You want to know that I'm taking this route and it's a shorter route. It's almost like getting a premium service. So an ideal tolling system is one that's technology-driven, is one that has transparency in the fund allocation, is one that you see that immediate benefit, but very importantly as well, it shouldn't be seen as another tax yet again to the citizen. it should actually have, in principle, an ideal case, best base practice is that it should have an alternative route. So the individual who's going through that route understands why I'm paying that premium. And if I can't afford that premium, I go through that alternative route. So it's not a flat-out task imposed on every citizen. So when you have those modeled into that tolling system, you see some of those sentiments, some of those trust issues, some of those things actually start to dissipate, and you then get the individuals who see where their money is going to with road maintenance, not kicking back on another road development, saying we need to toll this to develop it. They start buying into it, and that's where that stakeholder buying comes in, when you do these things and do them correctly. So tolling done well, I have no issues with it at all.
Interesting that you talk about the alternative routes where there's a tolling. Because I don't think we'll always have that. Some of the roads that I hear are being told now, you do not have alternative, you just have that route. But I hear you, the issue of trust, which is very predominant when it comes to government and the governed relationship in Nigeria. But when you say technology, would that mean, in practical terms, when I want to pay, I know when we used to have the one in Lekki, you could have a card.
Yes.
So you know that you're paying electronic, you're not giving cash, you could not, would that be enough? Or is there something else that could monitor and regulate the transparency in the system?
So what that does, that's a very good example of technology. Those card readers and then the tags you have on the vehicles as well. So the cars just go past, it takes it and reads it. Now, we talked about a number of things. So one of it is transparency in the system, right? When you have that mechanism that provides that level of transparency, that these funds are being managed properly. So if I come in and say, I'm going to do a build, operate, and handover, maintain for handover for 10 years, right? And every year, right, we have a data system that you, the end user, actually see, this is the collection rate, this is how much is being plowed back to the operator, this is when this is going to end, this is what is being, you have that trust in that system because there is that transparency that you have access to. So that's in addition to the tag and the card reader that you have there. Having that ability to monitor, see that the fund is being managed properly. When that trust is built, I think it will significantly reduce the antagonism or the distrust we have when they say, oh, yet again, there's another toll, because we see how the funds are being managed and we see it's in our own interests overall.
So we also have the tax credit scheme. That has been on for some years now. What's your assessment of the effectiveness of it? We've heard of some roads that Dangote, for instance, has done, but we do not know how many others. So how would you assess the effectiveness of that tax scheme, credit scheme?
What's a given and where we start from, or premise I want us to align on, is the government cannot handle the burden of infrastructure development. For us to meet up with any conversation we're having today globally, it's impossible, right? What the tax credit scheme provides is a viable alternative that allows for private sector participation in critical road infrastructure projects, right? And it provides that framework that permits that to happen. So like you said, we have some notable successes. You've talked about the Dangote one that connected Apapa ports all the way to Ojota through Oshodi, Oranjoki. And that economic corridor, it has had massive impact on that. Still on Dangote, we literally have a nerve between the north and the south in Kogi, connecting Obajana and Kaba. And that road that you have there, providing there, is noted as one of the most significant concrete roads that we have constructed. And it's been catalyst for conversations about concrete roads and the durability of it. Apart from them, you've got BUA, you've got NNPC, you've got LNG with the bridges and roads they build there. So numbers-wise, I think definitely it has actually contributed to our road infrastructure in Nigeria. But when you ask the question on the efficiency, it's not just about the numbers, it's about the sustainability of it as well. When you have a project like that, how do you ensuring that that project has built-in resilience to be maintained and operated over time? You know how the system, how the scheme works, where you get front-loaded your tax credit, and you deliver the project. If that company walks out at that point and says, I've delivered you a 40-year life cycle project, what happens for the rest of the life cycle of that project? Who's maintaining it? Who's running it? So for this to work adequately, you have to have that oversight, so strict oversight function to make sure you're managing, any inadequacies, any losses, any inefficiencies. But also you have to ensure that you instill project management discipline from the onset. So you're building a resilient plan for starters because you're handing this over to a private sector individual to do. So you're ensuring somehow that you have that visibility. One, that resilience plan is there that adapts that project to sustainable, all the changing economic, environmental, political situations that project is adapting through all of that. So when you have the ability to look at a scheme like that and ensure that all of these are happening and you've embedded it into it, it has the potential, the tax credit scheme has the potential to be a massive game changer. The third leg of it I'd look at and say in terms of efficiencies, we've called a number of companies, but that's a drop compared to the private sector participation in country. So how much work has been done with sensitization? How much work has been done with actually forward plan, being deliberate about getting private sector participation, understand what the value of this, and even going as far as aggregating it, having a special purpose vehicle, for instance, tasked with creating this sensitization and creating this value and participation of the private sector, because there is a lot of room for private sector participation and we could do with a lot more.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm interested in the maintenance and the sustenance because it's commonplace to hear people say we don't have a maintenance culture in Nigeria, and it's obvious. I mean, for instance, they want to rehabilitate the Third Mainland Bridge, and we know how much the government has to vote. Perhaps if there was someone whose responsibility it is to ensure that they are checking the maintenance of roads and bridges like that, then when there's a little, I mean, if you go to the United States, every time there's a little work being done, they don't wait until there's a big gap or big pothole or something. So if we were to give that sustenance responsibility to the private sector, what would be the incentive?
So I've always said short-termism is the bane of our project existence. We have that approach of deliver the project, cut the ribbons, fanfare, everyone walks away. And the way we plan projects with that short-term mindset, we set the projects up to fail, right? When the funding stops, nothing happens on those projects. Hardly anything happens. And you have so many projects competing for very limited resources. So when we talked about a while ago, ensuring you build in sustainability resilience from onset. So if you understand from onset that I have a project, a pipeline, a bridge, a road, a stretch of road that is 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. What you're planning, the resilience planning at that point is how do we maintain it over this? So you're advocating a financial model that doesn't just look at cutting the ribbon and celebrating it, a model that actually caters for the maintenance, the benefits actualization long after the ribbons and the fanfare is over. And until we start getting that project discipline mindset in our project delivery, we'll keep having some of these issues. At the Offshore Lab, this is the company I work for. This is at the heart of what we set out to do differently. We set out to ensure that when we deliver projects like the Arrival Wing E at Murtala Mohammed International Airport, that's 14 months old, but it was part of the fun fair of the Dirty December, for instance, because everybody walked in there, and the year after, that project has been so well maintained, it looks like the day we commissioned it. And that's a project sponsored by NNPC and Shell when you talk of private sector participation in government projects. So that's very key in project delivery, and it's a culture that we need to embrace to make any sort of difference.
Even in the smaller circles, homes and all of that,
yes,
it is a need. But thank you so much, Emeka Obiwulu, the founder and Chief Executive Officer of Offshore Lab, for your time this morning.
Thank you very much, Ini. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.